Good day, everybody. How's it going this week? Well, so it's interesting sometimes when non-furries cover furry news, and sometimes it's even more interesting when it doesn't have anything to do with the vertical limbo, if you know what I'm talking about. But it's even more interesting when a non-furry covers the furry fandom, doesn't cover the vertical mambo, or I should say the horizontal mambo, and at the same time, the article in which they write is timely for particular reasons. So that happened in the past few weeks, where an article that was posted by a non-furry press release talked about the 1%, or people who are basically like pretty well off economically for furries, who are in like higher, or what's deemed by society as sort of higher positioned jobs, such as like computer work and such like that. But I think that the title obviously is sort of an exaggeration at that point. I don't think anyone that they talk to is part of the 1%, and I don't know if anybody in the actual 1% is a furry. The people that they're talking to are probably upper middle class. Personally myself, if like I'm pretty solid middle class. Like if you had a class system, like I'm pretty solid in the middle. Like there's people who are in different classes and castes and things like that in life, and that depending on how much they make. So this one, the coverage of this, it's an interesting take, because when we're talking in the furry fandom, a lot of us know that there's some economic disparity between furries. It's talked about very rarely, but when it is talked about, it is a very heated conversation, and it usually has a lot of feelings and animosity within it. Because a lot of people who are furries typically don't present themselves as very financially well off, and stereotypically, a lot of people go, "Oh, they live in their parents' basement," and this sort of article sort of addresses that, and going, "No, not all furries live in their parents' basement. Some of them have their own house." Hello, tree. Some of them have their own. Some of them have their own house. Some of them do Some of them do live on their own, even if they are renting. I rented for a good decade of my life when I moved out of my parents' house. And like most people in my generation, I ended up having to move back for a little bit because of the shaky job markets that occurred within the Great Recession. But I've gotten back on my feet, and I kind of have a pretty steady job at this point. So I've always been very much a stickler for making sure that my financial systems are in order. So I've gotten to the point where personally I'm at a comfort zone. But a lot of furries are not in that way. A lot of furries, are still very much struggling with debt, very much struggling with certain other things. So when, social affluence comes into the furry fandom, it very much becomes a very big stickler and a very big conversation piece. Typically, it does revolve around, as this particular article notes, the luxury items known as fursuits can run you quite a bit of cash. Like the funny thing is that this tail right here, this head mask, this thing, and my feet paws, which I don't have on right now. I'm ruining the magic. I don't have my feet paws on. Ruining the magic. If you don't know what that means, that's up in the video there. So all that together ran about $500, and that's more expensive than this. Mostly because you're dealing with cost of labor. You're very much dealing with a person who's handcrafting the things. dealing with, things like that. And for most people, it's even more expensive than $500. This person just happened to be like somebody who's a hobbyist and like wanted to do their own thing. The suit, the sports jacket, back in 2006 cost me around $250. So this suit cost about, I think it was about $200, and the fur suit itself costs around like that. So quite expensive. Yeah, and but you save your eggs, and when you save your eggs, you can buy other things. As you notice, my walls are pretty barren. So it's like you have to choose your things, and I think a lot of people of this generation, where a lot of the stuff has gone from the physical into the digital, you're noticing a lot more sparsely populated walls and things like that. When it was my like grandparents and my parents, it was more like they have nice cabinets, they have nice like things in those cabinets, like there's just stuff, and the stuff takes up space, and it makes it feel very homey, because like it's sort of like a insulation kind of thing, where it's like you have that great grandfather clock that does the little pendulum swinging, and it gives the room a motif. Whereas like the younger generation, like they don't have all that. They kind of replaced it with very much digital sort of realms. Like their YouTube webpage might look a lot better than their things. That's sort of getting a little off topic, but it sort of has to do with sort of the dynamics of what wealth means and what it means to be wealthy in this era. And the reason that 1% article, but the one thing about that 1% article that I read that I kind of like was like, I kind of critique is where they're like, furries are used to being the brunt of the joke and the social social outcasts. And what you didn't know is that they're actually some rich people in the furry fandom. And it's like, just because you're rich doesn't mean you're not a social outcast. In fact, I would argue that sometimes being rich in and of itself can make you a social outcast if you don't wear it right. And it's like, because there was literally this like this guy named Howard Schwartz, I believe his name was, or something like that, who wanted to run as an independent candidate for president. And during one of his speeches, they're like, "Why are you running for president?" He's like, I can't remember what it was for the life of me. I'll put it up in the card above if I can find the link to that video. But he ended it in such a way where it's like he made it sound like he needed to find acceptance among the people. Like he's feeling like he as a rich person is feeling very ostracized because of people like Ms. Cortez and like other politicians who are speaking very ill of rich people. And he's, using he wants to become president because he wants to prove that rich people are good people and that people approve of rich people. Or something like that. And it's like, I'm like, that's not why you become president. No. What it sounded like is like, if he became president, he could become closer to the people. Like he wants to connect with people, so he wanted to become president of the United States. And it's like, no, that's not how it works. Becoming president of the United States is literally the last thing you want to do if you want to connect with actual people. Okay? If you want to connect with actual people, go to a local cookout. Okay? Take off your donkey suit, put on an actual long sleeve shirt, put on some jeans, and go out and go walk amongst the people. Like, it sort of reminded me of that silly little William Shatner song. It was like, I want to be like the common people. I want to be like everybody like you. I want to be like the common people. It's like if you're going... I've walked amongst, I'm still pretty much a common person. Like, I've walked amongst them for 3 decades now. being president of the United States is the last. If you want to connect with them, being the president of the United States is not going to help you do that. In fact, you're going to have people walking around with you going, "Sir, you shouldn't be connecting with people that way. They're going to kill you." It's okay. Like, I've seen it on TV all the time. They interact with common people. No, sir, that's all staged. We do a background check of everybody in the room. And we make sure that they're mostly harmless individuals. And they're just gonna go like, "Oh, it's the president, this is the best day of my life. I never thought I'd get to actually meet the president in real life." And they're not gonna talk to you about anything of substance. Because they know who you are. and they're not gonna tell you, like, they might talk to you about the real problems that they're having, but they're gonna talk to you in such a way where you're the one who's expected to do something about it, and not just as a catharsis. But anyways, back on topic about talking about the socially affluent furries. The reason that this actually connects with furry fandom is that recently, once again, a furry artist has made some ripples in the furry fandom because of the amount of money that they were able to make doing the, drawing and doing the content that they desire to do. And that person is a Russian furry named Myles DF. So Myles DF is a pretty skilled furry artist. It looks like he's got a Patreon. He does normal sort of fan sort of works that he sort of does on his own, but he sort of does for his patrons. He makes them somewhat risque. He does do adult artworks, but his normal stuff is sort of risque. But he offers the Patreons the more risque versions for like a monthly fee, things like that. But what he became really known for is a recent Your Character Here purchase of $5,000 for basically a pinup piece of work. Now, this is just a sketch, by the way. This is not his actual finished style. This is just a sketch, and just basically showing what pose it's going to be and stuff like that. Now, obviously, there was a lot of controversy about doing this kind of pinup for $5,000, particularly when the artist is choosing the pose, is choosing the genders, is choosing basically everything about the picture, but is charging basically an arm and a leg in some people's circumstances for these kind of things. And obviously his comment section caught fire in For Affinity, where he had put up that particular section. Looking over it, it's actually kind of interesting. I did a more deeper dive into Myles DF's sort of thing, because I quite honestly haven't heard of this artist really too much. I've heard of I've seen his works here and there, but I'm not big in the art scene, so I didn't really hear about DF until recently, and that whole $5,000 thing came up. I have talked about exuberant expenses and costs by furries before in another video on this channel when a fursuit was auctioned at $13,000. But I made it like a gamers versus furry thing because that very same week there was a auction for a gamer virtual gun skin that went for $61,000. Okay, so there's more about that in the upper description. Which, by the way, an interesting thing about that video, I later ended up getting comments from random people because it was I titled it "Gamers versus Furries." Exuberant expenses abound. Exuberant costs abound. And I was kind of pointing out to furries, it's the furries are yeah, $13,000 for a fursuit sure is expensive, huh? Gamer's hold my beer, son. Here you go. I'm going to spend $61,000 on a virtual skin. And the funniest thing about it is the tagline "Gamers versus Furries" apparently 3 months later became a meme of some description. So I started getting people from this whole TikTok thing coming in on my channel going, "I've got the furries in my sights. I'm about to shoot him." Yeah, and I'm like, wait, and that the comments just came up randomly, and I'm like, what is going on? And then I found out about the whole meme, and I'm like, oh, that would explain it. I thought like gamers were actually getting upset about me saying that they were paying too much for skins and stuff, but apparently that wasn't the case. But anyways, back to Myles. So Myles, like, he's got quite a bit of history behind him, and basically, like, drawing furry art is his full-time job. If it was like how, excuse me, I ruined magic here for a second because my thing is coming untucked. That's fine. But, you know, Myles is, his art, you know, like, he's certainly prolific. He certainly makes his pinups and he makes his things pretty frequently. What I do have to note, I do have a few things to note. He does have a Patreon, and he has like over 1,000 patrons, about 1,100, and the minimum is $5. The minimum tier is $5. So at minimum, he's making $5,500 a month just from his Patreon. And his highest tier is $50, which he offers some pretty, you know, he offers some pretty decent swag for those people, like, you know, little booklets and things like that with the art that he did for the month. And so, like, he is prolific, and he is doing it as a business, and he certainly is, you know, he's not like phoning it in or anything like that. But if he does have people who are doing the $50 ones, and like, let's assume everybody was doing that, he's making he's making like around, you know, $55,000 to $60,000, which is quite a chunk of change a month. You know, taking the law of averages about Patreons and stuff like that, probably more people are towards the lower tiers than the higher tiers. You know, he's probably making in and around maybe $15,000, $20,000 a month. Just from his Patreons, so which is quite a chunk of change. But you have to realize this guy is doing this as his full-time job, right? So, but even then, like, doing something like furry art for your full-time job and making like around 10K a month is quite a freaking bit of cheddar. But as I said, he's a Russian guy, so I think Patreon is in American dollars. I don't know how that translates into Russian currency. But, like, it's quite a chunk of change, and he obviously has to, like, I don't know if, like, the people who pay foreign individuals on things like Patreon end up having to do the exchange rates, or if it's the person whose Patreon it is. That's something that I don't know. But you could tell that he's comfortable with what he has. And he basically has made statements like basically capitalistic statements. Like, if there's a very high demand for my work, and I charge a certain amount of money for it, and people are willing to pay that certain amount of money, then it's well in my rights to do that. And because, you know, that's the whole thing. There is this sort of like animosity between artists who do drawings for the community, as to whether, you know, they should lower their rates because furries are not, you know, to you know, reach a larger audience and to be more accessible to furries who might not be socially or financially affluent, or whether or not, you know, that the furries should be trying to, you know, provide a service for, you know, people who are willing to pay for it and to, you know, do all that stuff. I think it really depends on the philosophy of the furry in question as to whether or not they're going to be doing more affluent stuff or not. But, you know, it looks like, from what I've been seeing, at least on the sketches, I could theorize that Myles DF, like, sort of knows what he's doing. Like, because this was the sketch he offered before this current one, and he only had it for $2,600. And somebody had bought that. And so basically, he's like, okay, somebody bought this work for $2,600. You know, I'm going to up the ante, and I'm going to make this pinup here for $5,000. And, you know, somebody had bought that one. So obviously, like, he's got to be careful. Obviously, like, it takes. I think he knows his own skills and his own strengths. He has done several Your Characters Here where there's like multiple characters and there's like 10 slots of varying prices, by the way. So, like, to say that he has not tried to be accessible to other people, like, there's basically in his sketches he has these group ones, which I cannot show here because they are very explicit in nature. But they have like these like at least like 10 characters, some having, you know, these things in the front, and then there's like pictures on the back wall, like with like posters and things like that. And like, if you take all the dollars for every character in that picture together, it's even more money than this lady with the $5,000. Like the latest picture that he tried to do a group thing with, I think it was called Workout Session 22 or something like that, which means he's done 22 of these particular Your Character Here things. My goodness. The dollar signs are just rolling in my head going, God dang, this guy's like milking it. This guy's milking the furry fandom like a calf. The Russians, you know, it's kind of funny because it's like the furries are like, oh no, look what we did to Zemivaka, and the Russians are going, yeah, look what you did to Zemivaka. Look what we're doing. Myles, you keep milking these guys, right? You keep milking these American furries. Anyways, I'm being facetious here. But like, literally, like, it was the last group one he did. If you add up all the totals of all the individual slots, it was $5,200. So it's not the $5,000 isn't even the most he's made on a single picture. Okay, the one that it's actually two ones before that he made $5,220. Now, why is he it's like if he made so much money doing these multi-slot ones, why is he going towards these individual slot ones? And this to me is a little more concerning to furries who want to become like part of one of his pictures, right? Like his older pictures, it's like with those group ones, it takes a lot of time. It seems like it takes about 3 months time for him to like get all the characters in order and do everything. But there's like the ones in the background were like for $90. It's like you want to spend $90 on a Myles picture, you could be in the background, and you won't be front and center, but you'll be a part of it, and you could spend $90 to be this character back here, or $100 to be this character over here, or if you really are the affluent one, you could spend $1,500 to be the front and center, you know, centerpiece of the picture. So it gave a chance for the affluent and the non-affluent to sort of kind of come together, which is great, which is like sort of a more well-rounded way of doing it. I think the bigger issue, though, is probably on a logistics side. It's a bigger pain in the arse for the artist to go, person A, person B, person C, did you pay? Person D, did you pay? Like, basically, person A through J has to have paid. And if person J doesn't pay, the one who's, who is the $90 one, he has to go out and find a new person to pay for it. And typically what you find is that the people who are putting down less are more likely to back out, mostly because, like, it is sort of an unfortunate thing about finances is that, you know, those people who, you know, are really hard at, you know, who are really, you know, down in the lower ends of the financial things do have emergencies that come up. And unfortunately it is a thing that's like, well, I'm gonna treat myself to this thing, and then something like a bat out of hell comes out and just kind of screws everything over for them. And it's a really unfortunate situation, and one that somebody who makes a lot of money might not understand, like, and might not understand how it has that sort of impact, and that it's not like the person's trying to dodge out or be a jerk. It's just that, like, something came up, that $90 now has to go towards something else, and something that can help them actually, you know, continue living and continue being at least somewhat comfortable in their life. And I think a lot of people who are affluent, who become affluent, somewhat misjudge that. So unfortunately, I think that, you know, with the amount of comments that, you know, Myles receives from those who are, you know, struggling to get by, that are like particularly negative in any way, shape, or form, and aren't very constructive to the thing. I think has sort of caused him to move more elite, right? It's sort of had this sort of blowback where he's now like narrowing it down to one character and asking that one character to spend the whole $5,000 because it's easier to deal with one person paying $5,000 than trying to get together, 10 people to dump $5,000 into an artwork that has more complexity. And I think that's sort of the direction he seems to be going, which is sort of unfortunate in a way. But it's like you're not gonna like. Here's the thing about the furry world: it's expanding. There's a lot of other furry artists out there that you can like find that will do your work for very, very, very low, like for obscenely low sometimes amounts of money. And like I did an article for Flera like about testing the furry network thing where this young lady did this artwork for me for like $20 that was like very, very, very well done, and it's like it was criminally lowly priced, honestly. And it's like, hopefully more furry artists can start to like move towards the more affluent, and at the same time it's like giving back to the community. Hopefully the people who do make these larger images and do make these larger things do contribute their works towards the community every once in a while. Maybe once a year they'll find a furry that they really, really like and really, really does good works, and they'll make fan art for them. Like if they notice that one furry's really down, and they like their story stuck out to them in such a way where it's like, I normally don't do like free artwork, but once a year I'll be charitable and like draw this picture for this particular person because this particular person, made my time in the fandom more enjoyable, or their story about the hardships that they went through really stuck out to me, things like that. And I think that as long as the people who become affluent, keep their ears to the ground and keep like doing that, I think it'll be much for the better. If there is one piece of advice I can give to Myles, it is you might want to shut down the comment sections on your sketches. Because like this, like I'm thinking that your name Myles has to do with the comment sections and how long it is, and the comment sections are pretty repetitive. Like, there are people who think that they're saying something original when they're actually not. Like about like, well, you could spend $5,000 on a used car, or you could spend $5,000 on a bicycle, or sorry, a motorbike, or something like that. Like one of the comments for I think this one was, you could spend that $2,000 on a motorbike, on an actual motorbike, and it's like, well, what if the person already has a motorbike and wants to have a picture of their character riding on a motorbike? Or like with the used car, it's like, well, what happens when this particular furry, who's spending a used amount of vehicle car on a thing, has a car already, like, and they don't need another car, they have a car, and it's like, well, there's other people out there who need a car. It's like, well, then they have to, it's like they have to manage their finances in order to acquire a car. It's unfortunate, but the thing is, like, you can't the problems with the world is that you can't throw money at everybody and expect a solution. It's a hard reality to deal with, but it's something that Oprah even found out when he was trying to help a young man, rise up. It's like this young man, she tried to help out by like giving him a quality education, by like basically giving him for free, by paying for him to go to this like nice school, and he just wouldn't show up, right? The guy never showed up, and he basically got expelled from the school. And Oprah's like, what the heck? I tried to help you out by giving you an opportunity that most people would freaking die for, and he just didn't take it. So But there are people who, that doesn't mean everybody would turn their nose up on something like that. But there is something within people that it's like there's more to it than just money. And the reality is that that's the problem with like when you're dealing with economic systems, is that there is something spirited about a person that's more than just money. And hopefully those who make a lot of money doing this kind of stuff realize that there's more to it than just money. That giving back to the community is a very important thing. And the more money you have, the more you have the opportunity to give back to the community. But also, don't just throw money randomly at people that you don't know, will use it wisely, right? It's one of those tricky things. It is a hard thing to deal with. And I've been burned a few times myself, where I go to a less affluent like place in Ohio or something, and I'm driving to a convention, and I pull off to a gas station. And then there's these ladies in this one car go like, well, we need your help, man. Like, we're trying to get there. We don't have enough money for gas. And it's like, okay, here's a 20. And then the person and the pump, like, adjacent to me goes, oh, you're such a nice young man. And it's like, oh, I'm doing harshness too. Do you have a 5? And I'm like, God, dang it. The thing is, like, this is why people wall themselves off. Is because they get burdened by people who are, tugging at your heartstrings and trying to tug at like things. And unfortunately, it's par for the course in a lot of urban areas in the United States where, people will say, well, I need money for an emergency purpose. You hand them money, and then the next thing you know, they're going, well, do you want to eat drugs or do you want this thing? And it's like it makes things like, so you go, well, I'm either going to take another path in the future and not go to this side of town, or I'm going to do something else, or I'm going to, learn to say no more often and go with a person, in case that they get, physical about it. It's one of those unfortunate things. It's something that a lot of people don't talk about. And it is something that it's like when people take advantage of other people's generosities or anything like that, people can start to wall themselves off. And that's sort of what happens they build a wall, as it were. And unfortunately, that's sort of the very big thing that we don't talk about when we talk about social affluence and social, social interactions of things like that when we're talking about people who are financially affluent versus those who are not, is that, and you can't really blame them because it's like, finances are needed in order to even, have a shelter and have food. And so like, can you blame them for using less than deceptive methods in order to try and get finances? I mean, the government does it all the time. I mean, people in higher powers do it all the time. So why should the poor be, have their ears boxed for being any different? Quite honestly, as a self-criticism myself in what I just said, like you can't really, can you really blame that? And it's a difficult thing to deal with because it's like, to me, it was just $5, and it's like, okay, if it did help them, I hope so. If it didn't help them and they just just continued to not use that opportunity to, better their situations and then use other people's generosity to make their situations better, or hopefully, think about, it's like, okay, how do I move on from here? My hope is that, that those kind of generosity things really did help people, and I don't keep second guessing myself over stuff like that, It's tough. But anyways, so my suggestion to Myles would be just turn off the comment section. Like, there's no reason that, because literally, like, Myles is on his sketch page says, like, if you were interested, DM private message me with your contact information and stuff like that. So literally, like, there's no reason for the comment section to even be active. they're not auctions. They're basically you pay this and you get it. So there's no reason to have like this like comment section thing open for anyone to comment. You basically should just have it shut down because they're just going to say, they're just going to say the same things over and over again at this point. And I'm sure Myles will agree. It's like they're just going to say these same things over and over again about, how much my art costs. And so why should I deal with that? And quite honestly, I think that that's unfortunate that a person's going to close themselves off to, other furries and having conversations about their artwork. But at the end of the day, they're sketches that are, asking for finances. So, like, take that as it were. Anyways, I probably rambled on quite a bit about this. But anyways, like, what do you think about, what is your opinion on art costs? How much is reasonable for art? Now, okay, I guess I'll end it with my personal opinion. Because nobody asked me, but, since I offered all this stuff, I guess I might as well. What would I say if I were writing something for the comment section? Quite honestly, obviously not my thing. Like, pin-ups and things like that aren't really my cup of tea. Like, if I'm paying $5,000 for a picture, in my personal opinion, like, personally, I would want to be able to personalize it, customize it, be able to choose the character, not be limited in any way, shape, or form based on their gender or sex or their sexual organs or anything like that. Like, I would not pay $5,000 to have a your character here sketch or work done. Like, I would want to be able to choose, like, a lot of the stuff, like the background. I would want to be able to choose what's going on the picture. That's just my personal opinion. And what would make me happier, spending $5,000 on a Myles picture or spending $5,000 on a bunch of other furry stuff? And the answer to me personally would be the other stuff. Now, if other people are spending $5,000 on a Myles thing because it make them happier than that, good on them. But hopefully they... and good on them for having $5,000 to spend freely, because that's very hard to come by. And honestly, like, having $5,000, like, if you have $5,000, it's probably better to be kind of putting it aside for a rainy day in case it does pour out there, because of my for somebody who's more practical like myself, having a Myles picture would probably be like, yeah, it's nice on my wall, but what happens if a tree falls on my house? I'm not going to be able to patch it up with my Myles picture. And that's the thing too. What I've noticed, just as a sort of aside, is that a lot of people, when they see things like this, they start thinking of the practical things they can do with $5,000, the utilitarian kind of a thing, and that shows that person's pretty responsible. I'm a really responsible dude myself. I think about things like $5,000. I could put that in a nice, like, high yield savings account and get 2% on, like, or get a good 2% yearly yield on it. I could do that. You know what I mean? But it's like, that's me. That's what I'm thinking. It's like, just because somebody else thinks something different doesn't mean it's any wrong, as long as their other financial things are in order. If they're spending so much money on Myles stuff that they're actually harming themselves, then I sort of am like, yeah, you gotta be careful. Spend what you can, but if you don't think it's safe for you to do so, don't do it. Like, either let somebody else do it, or, buy something more affordable that you won't, get yourself into hot water over it and stuff like that. Just silly little financial advice like that. But obviously, it's your money. If you screw up with it, it's you. But don't get angry about everyone else if you screw up with your money, and then go, well, I just screwed up with my money. Let me get the government to try and give me more so that I could spend more on furry pinups. Yeah, no, like, don't do that, please. Anyways, I'm going to get the hop out of here. Thank you very much for watching. This is a very rambly episode about a very deep and intriguing topic that I'm sure a lot of furries have a lot of passionate opinions about. Oh my god, do they have passionate opinions about this thing? What have you done? What have you done, person? No, you don't talk about money in the furry fandom. Don't talk about money. You don't talk about money. You don't talk about religion. You don't talk about politics. Those are the three things you don't talk about. Money, especially. Like, politics, like, interestingly, like, money is the most touchy subject for furries, I think. And, like, I guess, kick a comment in the comment section. Which of the three big no-no topics do you think is the harshest in the furry fandom? Do you think it's money? Do you think it's politics? Or do you think it's religion? In my personal opinion, I think it's money. I think money is probably the deepest and most like things. Because unfortunately, like, it's like if somebody dumped $5,000 for like the charity at Midwest Fur Fest, nobody would bat an eye. But dumping it on a pinup or something like that is seen as like a very selfish thing to do, even though that money is going to a fellow furry. Even though the furry is Russian. You know, like, we don't care. It's like, we're not xenophobes, man. Like, good on the Russians. You teach us good on how to do capitalist things right? It's kind of ironic that the bloodthirsty artist who's very much a capitalist staple of cutthroat capitalism with his money charges happens to be a Russian. Oh, the ironic world we live in. Anyways, thank you very much for watching. If you like the content, kick that like, kick the subscribe button, kick a comment in the comment section. Which of the three big dangerous topics do you think are the most revered in the furry fandom? Is it money? Is it politics? Or is it religion? Thank you very much for watching. Have a good one.